Hi everyone. So yeah, my name's Lee. I'm a design director at Barclays. Today I'm not going to be talking too much about Barclays itself. I'll make a couple of references, but really I'm here talking really about the industry and some of the things that we see happening in the design world today. And I'm going to go through some things that I'm still working through in my mind, but hopefully will provide some food for thought and some provocation. And really the theme of my talk is the new seriousness of design. So it's worth starting with a little bit of context. And I think everyone here will recognize it's a wonderful time for design. Design is capturing people's imagination. It's becoming part of the business world. You see all kinds of people talking about customer experience, user experience, and so forth. And it's more relevant than ever. So I just want to talk about three drivers of kind of why this is happening and hopefully sort of tie in a few threads and at the end try and produce something cohesive and meaningful. So why is design becoming so important? Lydia has already shown this image, so I hope that's a judgment of quality on my part. She had such a great talk. So the first reason why design is becoming so important is disruption and change. So we see the physics of whole business sectors being completely rewired and changed through technology. Here's an example. If you've got a product idea, you can put it on Kickstarter and you can raise millions of dollars without speaking to a bank. And people are launching businesses in new ways, but also there's social, political, and economic change right across the board. So it's very difficult to know what the world is going to be like in 5 years' time. And design is a way of navigating through that. Customer expectations have changed. So people are encountering well-designed things on a regular basis, whether it's Google Maps, whether it's your iPhone. Lots and lots of services are actually very well designed, and customer expectations have fundamentally changed. We have things like the Nest. This is a new smoke alarm that many of you have probably seen, and it's really well thought through. So you see design and the idea of thinking something through and really making something usable, engaging, intuitive, easy to use, and so on, permeating in loads of places. Also, we have rising complexity. So this is really one of the primary strengths of service design. So the value of something now is not so much connected or contained in one thing. It's distributed. So Barclays is no longer just about a branch and a checkbook. It's about a lot more than that. It's about distributed value in the same way that Nike is no longer just about shoes. It's about distributed value. So we see designers founding and running companies. We see agencies launching their own products. This is a newspaper called Courier, which an agency called Tomorrow's Land did, really just as to kind of showcase the kind of thing that they did. And to Lydia's point, it's turned into a little bit of a monster, as they describe it, and it's actually turned into a really good business. And we see design becoming part of the boardroom. So Pepsi has a chief design officer. Christopher Bailey is now running Burberry. And Barclays has recently announced a chief design officer. So it's an amazing time for design. And design is becoming a part of the literacy of business. And it's becoming so important, companies like Barclays are putting tremendous effort behind becoming design-orientated companies. So this is the Barclays Design Office, where we have about 200 people in that team, and it's rapidly growing. So we have behavioral scientists, researchers, industrial designers, visual designers, interaction designers, so on and so forth. And we see it's too important to simply procure design. We need to do design. We still work with partners, but we see design as fundamental to the way that we launch products and the way that we operate our business. So I really believe we are in a new era for design. Design has an unprecedented opportunity to show and prove its value, and it's already doing it. And I think the conversation is needs to move on in the sense that people are listening, people are using design, and business gets it. It's people understand it. It's a question of moving on to the how and how we're going to make the impact. So what are the implications of all these wonderful things happening to design? Design having a seat at the table, design being part of the boardroom. So simply put, design can make or break a business, and for many businesses it's about survival. Design, as Nick at the RCA was talking about at the start of the day, design is a way of making sense of things. It's a way of seeing. And we live in a time of so much change, so much technological possibility. Design can help create new realities. And when design gets it right, it's extremely powerful. And, as Nick also mentioned, we live in a period where we have the onset of profound global challenges: sustainability, climate change, aging population. So design has a major role. And this is serious. Huge potential. So are designers ready for this responsibility? Is service design ready for these opportunities and this responsibility? So when you do a search for service design, this is the kind of thing that comes up. Blueprints and processes and models. And I'm going to touch on an idea that's mentioned a few times, very eloquently by James from Engine, and also from Joe from Capita. So when we think of design, at Barclays, I've been growing a team. I've seen and met many, many service designers over the last sort of year and a half, and have been working with agencies. And typically, when you speak to a service designer or you're looking at a designer's portfolio, you'll see shots like this, ideation workshops and post-its, which have come up a few times. But it's amazing how often you go through that, and service designers are fantastic at communicating the how and what the process was, but quite often they don't frame what was the problem, what was the idea, and what happened. And what's so powerful about the work Ben Terrett is doing is that it's being delivered, and you can see the impact. So my question is service design more in love with process than outcomes? Are we like... Thank you. Because that could have been... but in a sense, are we like a musician who's more in love with the guitar than making music? So do we want to be defined by processes, or do we want to be defined by outcomes and our impact? So in tandem with this, because of all these different things happening, design itself is changing. We see design's role is essentially expanding. And we're seeing, as James was touching upon a moment ago, design is moving into strategy. So designers are not just responding to a brief. People are coming to designers and saying, what do we do? And designers are driving the conversation in many instances. We see design being very much part of the experience and the ongoing relationship. So as service designers, we are designing that ongoing relationship, or the lifetime value that James described. And because we're developing products in a lot more iterative way, designers are staying close to it once it's launched. It's not a fire and forget. So to use the Barclays example, we developed this product called Ping It, which lets you send money via your mobile phone. When we launched it, it basically did 4 things, but it did them, very well, but we didn't try and overcomplicate it. And since then, we've iterated it 10 times. And that's very unusual for a company like Barclays to do that. We also see a gradual realization that a company's brand is not really its marketing. For some companies, I suppose it is, but for most companies, your brand is the reality of using the products and services and the way that you interact with that company. And companies spend a lot of money on marketing and making promises, and a lot less money on keeping them. So your experience ultimately is your brand. And as service designers, we are, in a sense, turning brand intent into reality. And then, as being talked about, the delivery side, and how do you operationalize the experience, again, is a really important area for service design. So you have this idea of design's role expanding, but at the same time, there's a contradiction here, that the design process itself is collapsing in on itself. So we see visual people coding, we see researchers making, we see business analysts wireframing, and all in the context of a more iterative process through build, test, and learn cycles. So while you have this expansion, you have this contraction, and there's a huge amount of blurring of roles and responsibilities. Add to that, the line between what a product and service and physical digital, again, is all blurring, and it's just becoming around problem solving and distributing value through various things. So there's a lot of forces acting. So you've got this expanding role and responsibility, you've got collapsing processes, and you've got this sort of fusion of materials, physical, digital, and so forth. So I think this is fundamentally creating new conditions for design. And this has implications for design education, for design agencies. So what's the model for agencies when more companies have in-house teams? And it has implications for the design community, and obviously implications for service design. So a couple of examples. Yesterday was a lot of talk about, definition, but actually, can you define something when everything around it is melting? It's very hard, and the question is, does that actually hinder service design? What is service design? Try and define it. Well, it's designing services. Service design also as a discipline can come, James was talking about this, can come top down, but also it can come bottom up. You see other disciplines using service design thinking, interaction designers, experience designers. So service design itself is becoming distributed and atomized. I just want to touch on three kind of ideas or opportunities, principles, I'm not sure those are the right words, which come out of these ideas. I was trying to find the right picture for the devil. I thought this was apt. But I think we're at a point where the idea that the devil is in the details is no longer true. So you can have a great brand and you can have a great digital experience, but your business can be totally made redundant by a bunch of 18-year-olds in a garage with a transformative idea. And that is, again, the power of service design. So I think the devil is in disruption and differences. And I think one of the things service design can do is really think about those transformational ideas. So to frame it another way, will the future of banking be decided by UI design? Probably not. And there's so much focus on digital design and micro interactions and so on and so forth. So don't take what I'm saying as details don't matter. Details absolutely matter. But is the devil there? And I'm suggesting that he's moved. And it's about disruption. As companies like Sony and Nokia have seen, they have a huge focus on design, a great heritage in design. But it's not just a case of getting the design right. You have to be designing the right thing. And again, this is a great opportunity for service design. I also think it's more important than ever about it's what we add rather than take away. There's a huge movement for simplicity and flatness and reduction, so on and so forth. And when you start working a design problem and taking things to its logical conclusion, things just start gravitating to the same answer. So contemporary car design, cars start looking the same. If accommodation was simply about maximizing space, you just produce stuff like this, which is a box. But are we creating bland, flat, and seamlessly forgettable experiences and products and services? And do people actually want something more, something that they can connect with? So as service designers, coming back to the point around experiential branding and us moving into the pillar of brand, it's a real opportunity to think about those personalities, and it's really important about what you're adding into the system. The last idea I'm going to introduce with a video, which hopefully will play.
They are the 8 nymphae, Monet's canvases of water lilies, inspired by the water garden he created and then painted again and again.
Of course, the really overwhelming thing is the scale. These are simply enormous paintings. They're bigger than most ponds. The scale is celestial. What's really interesting is that these have become almost completely abstract. It's as though Monet has immersed himself so closely and nearly with what he's painting. I mean, I see him standing right close to the canvas, that he's not really painting the garden anymore. He's painting what the garden means. He's painting light and color and the fact that it's water. It's bouncing off and it's becoming abstract and metaphysical. And that's beautiful. That's inspiring. But he's taken the garden and gone beyond.
So I found that piece of footage really inspiring when I first saw it. And I think this is probably a world first. It's probably the first time the devil and Monty Don have been used to make a point, and probably the last. So the thing which I really wanted to talk about there was this idea of transcending how the service works to what the service means. This idea, so Monet wasn't just painting the garden, he was painting what the garden means. And this is about designing for empathy and creating that connection. So again, we need to go beyond just making something functional and mapping out the steps. We need to transcend that and actually to what the service means, whether it's a diabetic healthcare solution and so on and so forth. So this idea of working with the materials and understanding them in the same way that Monet understood the plants and he was a gardener. I think that's very, very important. So just to summarize a few of the things that I've talked about, it's a wonderful time for design. There's various things happening which I believe are creating new conditions for which service design needs a new kind of mentality. There's an opportunity to extend its reach, which many companies and many service designers are already starting to do, that we need to build upon, into those pillars of strategy, operations, experience, and brand. As that was so eloquently explained by Joe, is to get into the grit and the idea that service design sometimes fizzles out. And I think it's very much about being more than the glue or the integrator or the facilitator. If we want to have impact and if we want to be a genuine discipline, then we need to bridge that reality gap and we need to get into the delivery side, which again James was talking about a moment ago. And as roles and services blur and everything melts, and you have product designers who are thinking like service designers, you have interaction designers, all these different disciplines thinking about service design, which is about solving problems, creating value, and then distributing it, is for service designers to deliver, make things, and get in there, and ultimately convince through doing. My last thought I want to leave with you is to suggest that we should be more in love with outcomes than process. Thank you very much.